Okay, so now that was wearing my one hat. Now I have the pleasant job of also saying a couple of quick thank yous and then handing it over to Esther for the next one. I just want to recognize that there are 8 partners who make JPAL what they are. You've heard of our researchers and affiliates without whom we would just not exist. You've heard from our implementation partners who are such an important part of where we are. You've heard from our donors, including the bilaterals like FCDO, the new organizations like FEED. But there are a few others. There are partner organizations like IPA, whom I want to recognize, EPOD, SIGA, EPIC, all the centers which have been co-hosted by our friends and our affiliates. I also want to thank the program participants and the community, the host universities who make us what they are. Paris School of Economics, without you, we would not have been here. And similarly, there are 7 other universities. The civil society, the press who helps shine the light on evidence-informed policy making. And finally, the staff who make this all happen. Thank you to all of you. And for this particular event, I'm going to hand it to Esther. But Esther, this was fantastic. Thank you, Abhijit and Marc Gergan, the scientific directors of JPAL Europe. Thank you to Anna Killian and the fantastic staff at JPAL Europe who made this happen today. And thank you to PSC. So on behalf of all the staff at JPAL Worldwide, thank you to all of you for making this happen. And with that, over to Esther Duflo.
Bonsoir, bravo d'être encore là. Dans une demi-heure, le cocktail nous attend. Peut-être même moins. Mais en attendant, c'est mon plaisir d'introduire Rémy Rioux, qui va parler en anglais, mais je vais l'introduire en français pour parler un peu en français. Et puis même si les anglophones ne comprennent pas ce que je dis, je pourrai traduire rapidement. Rémy Rioux is the head of the Agence, française, développement. That's all you need to know, the English speakers, and then you can talk to him to know more. C'est donc le CEO, Chief Executive Officer de l'Agence française du développement depuis 2016. Avant ça, il a eu toute une carrière de position dans la haute administration française, toute en connexion avec le développement et le développement durable. D'abord, il était je ne sais pas comment on dit en français, chief of staff, disons, de Pierre Moscovici quand il était ministre de l'économie et des finances. Puis, il a coordonné l'agenda de finances de la présidence française de la COP 21, la COP 21, dont vous vous souviendrez, est une des COP les plus importantes des dernières années, peut-être la COP la plus importante des dernières années. I'll say that also in English. He was the coordinator for the finance agenda for the French presidency of COP 21, which was one of the most important COP that has happened in recent years. Et c'est donc en 2016 qu'il est devenu directeur de l'Agence française du développement. Et en 2017, il est aussi devenu le chairman de IDFC, International Development Finance Club. C'est le groupe qui réunit 26 banques de développement nationales et régionales et qui, à ce titre, est responsable d'une grosse partie du financement international pour le développement et des finances. Pour ce qui nous concerne immédiatement, il se trouve qu'il a été très impliqué de très près dans la préparation et l'organisation de ce qu'on a appelé l'autre conférence, c'est-à-dire le sommet pour un nouveau pacte financier qui s'est organisé par le président Macron et qui se tenait au Palais Brongniart ces 2 jours aussi. Et comme vous avez fait le choix de passer 2 jours avec nous, il a gracieusement accepté de venir nous raconter un petit peu ce qui s'était passé dans ce sommet, quelles sont les perspectives pour l'avenir et comment ça se relie potentiellement avec les discussions qu'on a eues aujourd'hui. Rémy, s'il vous plaît.
Bien, merci beaucoup Esther. Quelques mots en français peut-être pour commencer. Il doit bien y avoir quelques francophones dans la salle. Je les salue. And I immediately switch to English to thank you, Esther, for the invitation. I know I'm the one between the cocktail, between you and the cocktail, so I'll try to, I'll try to be brief and really wish you first a happy birthday to Iqbal. 20 years, it's impressive, hard work and lots of key results for development. And you're all part of this community. I want to pay respect. We learned a lot from your collective work. And yes, maybe I can. Well, I have to readjust a bit, coming from Palais Brognard. Was a very famous place in Paris because it was our former stock exchange, and so the place of finance, and turned to Collège de France, which is another temple of science and truth. And these interests somehow compared to interests. So a bit, well, I have to try to be consistent in these few remarks. In the other place, so the place of finance, the place of power, we gathered like you for the last 2 days. About 400 heads of state, a few from the G7, but a lot coming from the BRICS and so-called, I hate this word, but the so-called global South. So their voice was made loud and clear, which was precisely the purpose of this initiative President Macron took when we were in Sharm el-Sheikh for COP27 at a standstill in the fight against climate change, especially on the financial side at the end of last year, and seeing, of course, after the war in Ukraine, developments in the field of geopolitics, which are extremely preoccupying. So his idea was really to create a place where we avoid fragmentation. So I don't know if we succeeded, but if you listen to the discussion this morning and the tone of it, from my point of view, I think it was a success. And this risk of fragmentation, of course, should not disseminate and further fracture the financial system. So that was the purpose. A financial system that is already highly fragmented. Not really consistent. We made a mistake back in 2015. So yes, I negotiated the Paris Agreement on climate. I was in New York for when the SDG agenda was decided. And maybe you remember there was a previous conference in Addis Abeba in July 2015. So we made a mistake because we set the ambition after discussing the means of implementation. And so we should have done the other way around, start with maybe climate, biodiversity, then set the whole framework with the SDGs, and then have the discussion on finance. And this discussion is missing for 7 years now. So I hope these last 2 days it has really started, and it's very important because in the end, it's very macro, of course, but it's important. These frameworks are guiding institutions, and especially guiding public institutions that are following them. And so if the mandate is unclear, as it is since 2015, of course, the impact in the end are not necessarily there. So we need clarity on the mandate, on the narrative, and we have this tension, as you know it, since 2015 between the fight against poverty and the fight against climate change. So we thought SDGs were enough, but we heard in the discussion at the political level that it's still there. And this is something probably you as researchers, you academics, you know. This is something also us as public bankers, we also feel and know, and we feel the urgency to reconcile actually these two dimensions, and to probably redefine the two public policies we are serving, so development, poverty, and climate, into two other public policies. One, a guarantee for the most vulnerable, meaning the poorest and those that are the most exposed to the consequences of climate change and loss of the biodiversity. That's one pot of finance in the end. And, global commons, reducing emissions everywhere as rapidly as we can with the private sector. And these are two sets of objectives and of tools also. An allocation of scarce public resources that is from AFD, I'm heading from the World Bank, from is unclear. Our shareholders have to decide on this and set the right mandate. And of course, having vulnerability factored in, revenue per capita, human development index is something that has to be done with the proper expertise in the legitimate place where these decisions are taken. Otherwise, we will continue to have that tension and that lack of clarity in our operations. The new consensus, as it was phrased by leaders, so that's the new narrative. Of course, a new financial ambition and toolkits. So I will not go into the details, but we made progress these last 2 days on the debt side. So the Prime Minister of China was in the room and accepting to implement this common framework that was decided by G20. We did it in Chad. Good news is we succeeded in finding an agreement for Zambia yesterday. Zambia, which is as you know it, in default since 2020. So it makes 3 years now that the country is in huge financial difficulties. So the Paris Club plus China and the other, and that's very, very important for other countries, Ghana, Ethiopia, probably others to come, to find a renewed way of dealing with debt distress. We also succeeded in gathering the 100 billion of SDR that were promised in May 2021. So it's not the general allocation of 650, it's the part that is on land by G7 countries or others for the new trust fund at the IMF called the RST to finance climate change. And hopefully the discussions are ongoing to leverage these resources with the balance sheet of regional development banks over time. So just on this, and a lot of discussion on international taxation as well, especially on shipping. There's an important meeting 2 weeks from 2 weeks from now at the IMO on this. So a bit of goodwill. We'll see. Again, we need a global a macro agreement between China, the US. And Europe, especially on this for this sector. And last but not least, the discussion was also about the new architecture of development and climate finance, with two elements. First, of course, how the Bretton Woods institution, the IMF and the World Bank, could play again their full contribution, again to avoid fragmentation between the BRICS Bank and the World Bank. I mean, there's a possibility of a fragmentation on the public finance side of the world. Certainly, and there are colleagues from the World Bank, I think, in the room. Or we have to re-establish the multilateral function and role of the World Bank, which goes way beyond its financing. And comes also from knowledge, the reason why we're in this very room today. And so the same for the IMF, and maybe have a clear roles set between the two sides of the street. Division of labor, as we say it. So that's one, how to legitimate. So the governance issue of this institution, which is a very difficult and tricky issue, was looming and was in the room. I'm not sure we made a lot of progress on this, but at least their functions could be strongly reestablished, their capacities also. And the second dimension of the architecture I'm particularly attached to is could we enlarge the vision of development and climate finance, not only reserved to multilateral development banks, but also embark national public financial institutions, national public development banks. So this is my duty as the chair of this club, this mysterious club Esther was referring to, called IDFC. Keep in mind another initiative which is bigger, that is called Finance in Common, FIX, which is, the idea is very simple. Let's gather the 550 public development banks in the world. So again, a global one, the World Bank, the regional ones, and the national. And of course, as always, the bulk of the financing is at national level. So it's 2.5 trillion US dollar existing investments each year. It's quite well balanced in every region of the world. And what if we could turn these 2.5 trillion green and sustainable? Of course, for their own sake, and also because of their capacity to mobilize their constituencies, their private sector, their financial sector, to talk to their heads of state and government. I mean, what a national legitimate institution can do in its own constituency. We have one in France, it's called, Martin is here, it's called Caisse des dépôts et consignations. It's the oldest one in the world, born in 1816, after the Napoleon War. So Napoleon stole it all, I mean, the savings of the French people. So we created a special institution to protect the savings. It was put under the scrutiny and control of the parliament and not the executive branch. And well, this is where the experience of the development of France accumulated for more than 200 years. So if you want to know what worked and what didn't in France, ask Eric Lombard and his colleagues at Caisse des dépôts et consignations. They know it, actually. Sometimes more than governments that are coming and leaving, and that's it's the same in each and every country. You have it's a treasure, and now because of the crisis, we need these institutions. They are all recapitalized. They are all on the move, and certainly this is a force. This is a force for good. So we have created this forum, this coalition. The World Bank and all the multilateral are now members, and so they are all in. And now it will become very serious on how we mobilize these institutions. So that's for the other place. Of course, there's a direct link with what you did here in the other place in Collège de France, because it was a lot about maybe the word innovation was not that high when you will read the papers and all that, but I think in the room was the feeling that we cannot do business as usual, and that we have to be accountable, that we have to unlock impact, and that the system as is was not enough. So a search, of course, it will take probably years. It's only a start. A search at the highest possible and legitimate political level. A search also between all the stakeholders, all the players that were in this room for innovation. And so that's why it's so important to connect and to have both events at the same time. And I really want to commend what you did for 20 years. At its level, AFD can bridge, maybe, these two worlds. Juliette is here, so you know we have created, that was a first here in France, I think a first in continental Europe compared to what happened in the US and in UK. And I pay tribute to that, to put within a public development bank, only hosting a seed to make it more innovative and transfer the lessons of science into operation. So this is happening in all these institutions, and this is urgent, and it's very important also to change the narrative. I remember when I was appointed in 2016 at AFD, I had in my office a book that I was supposed to sign and give to all the staff at AFD about how we do projects in a development bank. So that was helpful for me because I was just arriving, so I read this book. But there was a page where I stopped, because this page, it was a very respected director at AFD that had written this book. But at that page, it was written that, please, in the world of development, never innovate. It's extremely dangerous. We know what we have to do. We know how the cycle of the projects, we know the technologies. So it was so I don't want to put the blame on AFD, I'm sorry. But it was only 7 years ago. Come on. And we were supposed to give that. The thousands of people came from 2016 at AFD, recruited because we doubled size. And I was supposed to give them that kind of message. So, and I suspect that if it was written for AFD staff, probably it could be the same in other institutions. So that's, thank you Esther, thank you Juliette, thank you to Thomas, of course, Mélonio, and this Fonds d'innovation pour le développement. Thank you to have planted this seed. Thank you to have, I think there's about 100 experts that are contributing to the assessment, to helping us to choose the projects that have the most potential. And then please help us disseminate the results in our daily operations, because probably we are sometimes a bit lazy still, or a bit repetitive, or we do not understand the context, we do not understand enough the innovations, the technologies, and we want to change. Maybe I will stop here. Just add one thing, again, to come back to Paris. Palais Brongniart, the stock exchange, Collège de France, for science, I really see in this very day something very symbolic. And we had an event yesterday about it. I'm searching for a very long time to what is the role of Paris in global governance. So everybody know what Rome is about. Rome is agriculture, food security. Everybody knows that what Geneva is about. It's human rights and health. I was in Vienna on Monday, so Vienna is about spying, as you know it. So it's the capital of spies. So that's a role, huh? Coming back actually, because of the fragmentation. Well, we know what Washington is about. We know what New York. We know what Nairobi is about. Environment. Well, and somehow we don't know exactly what Paris is about. So it's maybe the fashion week, and then museums, and well, that's fine with it. But I suspect, and probably because again I was one of the actors of the Paris Agreement in 2015, that there's something deeper, more serious, and maybe it's about finance this morning and science this afternoon, and probably it's about sustainability and impact. So when you see in Paris, you have so many institutions in the field of science and education. And we have the main multilateral organization that is supposed to do the science and the education of sustainable development. It's called UNESCO. And all those below, the fantastic generation of academics, maybe that's why Abhijit and Esther are coming back. I don't know. well, there's a pillar. I mean, on I would say sustainable science, and you also have a set of actors, very interesting, in the field of finance and economics. I mean, let's say sustainable finance. You have all the banks, you have the offices of the IMF and the World Bank in Europe gaining ground, and you have one of the main international organizations there, which is OECD. And OECD is the place where the definition of ODA was set back in 1969. It's the place where hopefully the definition of ODA will be rediscussed. We need that rapidly. Otherwise, it will happen outside of Paris. It's also where, you know, the question of global taxation has been put so high on the political agenda these last few years. There's also a lot of experience on the financial system, etc. You also have in Paris the International Chamber of Commerce, which is a very interesting institution, completely aligned with SDGs. So the point is, could we envisage to make Paris some sort of platform, laboratory for solutions, for innovation in the field of SDGs? The place where we could have in-depth, serious dialogue between the world of finance and the world of science. So I don't know, but could be with your help. AFD will relocate in 2026 in another building than the one maybe a few of you know, close to Gare d'Austerlitz, close to a very famous hospital, La Pitié-Salpêtrière, where Martin took care of the first patient of COVID, and where is the Center for Tropical Diseases, if I'm right, of APHP, in front of the Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle, for more than 200 years, the temple of biodiversity, climate. Well, close to a railway station, close to Caisse des Dépôts, close. So, and AFD, hopefully at the heart of it. We have actually, we bought the building, 50,000 square meters. We only need 40. So we have 10,000 square meters for you. Well, at least for anybody willing to come in Paris. Again, not exclusively from what the other capital of the global governance are providing, but maybe to do things that would not happen elsewhere. So I stop here, but that's the promise. And if you want to participate to this dialogue, you will always find at AFD many friends and listening ears. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm not going to attempt to summarize these 2 days. I'm just going to leave you with my general impression. I'm just, maybe I'm exhausted, number one. Number 2, elated and full of hope and joy. I'm also pretty happy that this was at the same time as at the NPF summit, because I think it's very important that at the time where maybe they discussed what hasn't happened the way it should have happened, and what needs to be changed, and what crisis we are falling, and how it all needs to be at some macro level of raising money. We spent 2 days saying what has happened that should have happened, and how it was extraordinary and beyond everyone's expectation, and about how it didn't come from the chief of governments, however many they were in a room, but from thousands of people working in the field, tens of thousands of people in NGO, in governments, and of course, millions and millions of people living in poverty with all their joy, their dreams. And I think it is good that these two things happen together, and if someone pays attention to the parallel, I hope they understand that these dimensions better stay at the core of what we want to do next. And it's not even about innovation versus finance, it's about, don't remember the people who are not smoking in the submarine, to take back the wonderful image from Minister Lawson. So I'll just finish with some thanks. I was very terrified when Iqbal started thanking people, saying, hey, that's my job, like what happened to the wonderful planning of this organization? I didn't, but in fact he realized he was thanking people for the whole of JPAL, and I'm just much more narrowly going to thank many people for what happened in those 2 days. Couldn't have dreamt of a better birthday party. So first of all, there is the Collège de France, who is hosting us, who is hosting me, more generally. The Collège de France, for people who are not French, is a pretty unique institution in that it is totally open to everyone. You can just come and go and come and go, and people don't need to be registered, and people don't need to say they're gonna come, unless there is really like an inordinate amount of people. It is just open. This means that the room today is very diverse. You have researchers, you have students, you have people in all walks of life who have taken a bit of time to hear these problems, who take time to hear people teach about various things. So my second thanks goes to you, the audience, people who took an effort to come. For this, I can switch to French. Merci d'être là. Merci d'avoir été là aussi pendant mes cours de l'année pour tous. Et pour tous les étudiants, merci d'être là non seulement en personne, mais dans votre corps, mais aussi avec toute votre énergie et votre force. On en aura besoin pour toujours. Donc merci de votre attention. Je réalise que c'est en anglais et que l'attention est encore plus difficile en anglais, et je vous remercie vraiment d'être là. Nous, académiques, ça nous fait vivre de parler à des gens. Next, I would like to thank the speakers who came from far and wide. We had a great representation of people, both in terms of geography, in terms of field of expertise, researchers, policymakers. I think everyone put so much effort in preparing amazing presentations that gels together, and I'm very grateful for that, and very grateful that we got such a wonderful spectrum of what this movement is all about. Then, of course, I would like to thank the many people who made this happen. This started about 6 months ago, and it started with me saying, come on, that's not so hard to organize a conference. I was told one of the person I want to thank is Anna Schrimp, who unfortunately is ill and couldn't be here today. And about 2 weeks ago, I told her that I owe her "I told you so," and she said, "Oh, I'm going to write it in my books, because that's not very frequent that you acknowledged that you might be wrong about anything." So, in fact, it was not a piece of cake. It was a huge amount of work. So I want to thank the people who spent 6 months working on this. So that's Anna Schrimp, Kilian, Joe, Ottavia, and Ilf. I want to point out that these people are not professional event managers. You might think they are because they are so good at what they are doing, and also some of them have these delightful black shirts. But that's really not their job. Their job is to, go out and save the world and so on. And they, but there's no job, small or large, that they won't do. And that's, a small proof of that. So thank you for the very bottom of my heart for all of you who have put 6 months in that, and thank you also for all of the staffs who also took some days out to be here, Adrien, Louis-Maël, Tessa, and Sarah in particular. Thank you for this event, but also thank you for the amazing work that you guys are doing at JPAL Europe, day in, day out. Iqbal has already mentioned the staff in general, but since we are in your turf, I think it's the right moment to be particularly grateful for your presence. And finally, last but certainly not least, I want to thank and also acknowledge people who are not here and who are yet at the core of everything we are doing. Several people mentioned that this work has changed their lives. This work has changed my life. And we do it because we are trying to make a difference in the life of people who have very difficult lives. And at the end of the day, I don't know if we do, we claim we do, but certainly they make a difference in our lives. And they are not present in these rooms. And yet, I think they were already acknowledged by Carl. They answer our survey, they gamely participate into that program and this program, and like a lot of what we do, it doesn't even work. I'm pretty sure we don't harm anybody. In fact, we are working within very strict ethics rules to make sure we don't. But certainly, we kind of take their time and ask them questions and also take their spirit and share into their lives and encounter their dignity. And this has made us better people. I hope it has given them slightly better lives. So I want to finish with it. Thank you.